The moment my mother walked into my kitchen, she didn't even say hello. She just pointed a single, accusing finger at the whistleblower payout sitting on my counter. And in that instant, I knew with a chilling certainty that I was about to be liquidated. My sister Sarah was right there beside her, practically vibrating with desperation. Her eyes were darting between my mother and that check, a massive $125,000. Sarah had an audit breathing down her neck on Monday morning and a felony-sized hole in her company's bank account. They hadn't come to celebrate my success. Oh no, they had come to liquidate me to save her. I looked at my mother's hands, the same hands that had systematically dismantled my credit score before I even turned 18. And in that frozen moment, a devastating truth slammed into me. I wasn't their daughter. I was just an insurance policy they were finally, greedily cashing in. I didn't scream. I didn't argue. I didn't even blink. I just stared at them. And in the silence, my mind began to calculate. See, my job title is Senior Risk Analyst. Companies pay me 6 figures a year to sniff out disaster, to find the hidden cracks in the foundation, the liabilities people try to bury in the fine print. And sitting there, trapped in my own living room, looking at my parents and my sister, I realized I'd been ignoring the biggest, most dangerous liability in my own life for 29 years. To understand why I didn't just throw them out that very second, you have to understand the toxic biology of my family. I call it parasitic symbiosis. In nature, some organisms can't survive on their own. They need a host. In our house, Sarah was the glorious, shining host, the beautiful face the world was supposed to see, the one who would be famous, marry rich, put our last name on a billboard. My parents, they were the immune system, constantly fighting off anything that might make Sarah uncomfortable. And me, I was the liver. My sole purpose was to filter out the toxins, to absorb the poison, so the rest of the body, Sarah, could stay pretty and perfect. The most terrifying part is, they didn't see themselves as evil. To them, sacrificing me to save her wasn't cruelty. It was biological necessity. It was survival. I remembered the exact moment I understood this, even if I didn't have the words for it back then. It was 11 years ago. I was 18. I just walked through the front door, my hands trembling, clutching a thick envelope from an Ivy League university. I'd opened it on the porch. I got in. Not just in, but with a partial scholarship. It was truly the proudest moment of my life. I walked into the kitchen, beaming, ready to share the news, ready for celebration. But before I could speak, I saw a cake on the table. It read, "Congratulations, Sarah," in bright pink icing. Sarah had just been accepted into a local modeling academy, a 6-week course that cost more than an entire year of my tuition. My father took the acceptance letter from my hand. He didn't smile. He didn't hug me. He just read it, sighed, and set it down next to the dirty dishes. He told me we had to be realistic. He said they couldn't afford to send me halfway across the country, even with the scholarship. He declared that family resources had to go where the highest return on investment was. 2 days later, a brand new BMW convertible gleamed in our driveway. Pearl white, tan leather seats. My mother told me it was necessary for Sarah's image. Sarah couldn't show up to auditions in a beat-up sedan. After all, appearances mattered. That car cost $45,000. That was my college fund. Every dollar I'd earned working summer since I was 14, mixed with the savings my grandmother had left specifically for my education. They liquidated my entire future to buy Sarah a prop. I didn't go to the Ivy League. I went to a state school 40 minutes away, working the night shift at a warehouse, loading trucks until my back felt like broken glass, just to pay for my textbooks. I graduated with honors, debt, and a spine made of steel. Sarah, by the way, crashed that BMW 3 months later. Walked away without a scratch. My father just bought her another one. They broke me back then. They taught me that my dreams were convertible currency for Sarah's fleeting whims. But looking at them now, 10 years later, something fundamental had changed inside me. The liver was tired of filtering the poison. If you're still with me, still shaking your head at all of that, then you already know this story is far from over. If you haven't already, take a quick second to hit that subscribe button, because trust me, the ride is just getting started, and you won't want to miss what happens next. Sarah, however, was no longer the rising star. She was a 32-year-old fraud with a failing startup and a felony hanging over her head. And I wasn't the 18-year-old girl crying over a rejection letter anymore. I was the person who knew where the bodies were buried because I had been forced to dig the graves. Sarah wiped a perfectly practiced tear from her cheek. "I just need a bridge loan," she pleaded, promising to pay me back after her next round of funding.
It was a lie.
I knew it was a lie because I'd pulled her credit report an hour before they arrived. She was maxed out, drowning, and she wanted to stand on my head to breathe. I looked at my father. He was tapping his foot impatiently. He expected me to do my job, to filter this problem away, just like always. He thought he was looking at the same daughter he had bullied for 3 decades. He didn't realize he was looking at a risk analyst who had just decided to liquidate the liability. I let my shoulders slump. It was a calculated, physical collapse, the exact posture of the defeated daughter they were used to seeing. I put my head in my hands and let out a shaky breath, making sure it sounded like I was breaking, not plotting. "Okay," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Okay, I'll do it. I can't let you go to prison, Sarah." The tension in the room snapped like a cut wire. My mother let out a long sigh, deflating with relief. My father leaned back, a smug, satisfied expression spreading across his face, the look of a man who had successfully disciplined an unruly employee. Sarah stopped pacing, her wet eyes full of what she thought was gratitude. "But we have a problem," I said, my voice rising slightly, injecting just enough panic. I stood up and grabbed my laptop. "I can't just wire $125,000 to your personal account. The IRS algorithms will flag a transfer that size immediately. If they freeze my accounts for review, the money won't get to you by Monday. You'll miss the audit deadline." Sarah's face went pale again. "I can fix it," I said, typing furiously, making it look like I was scrambling. "But we have to document it correctly. If I send this as a personal loan, federal law requires me to charge you a minimum interest rate. If I don't, the IRS counts it as a gift, and we both get hit with a 40% gift tax. That's $50,000 gone." My father shot up. "We are not paying $50,000 in taxes. Figure it out." "There's one loophole," I said, turning the screen slightly away from them so they couldn't see my hands, shaking, not from fear, but from pure, cold adrenaline. "If we classify this payment as third-party restitution, it's tax-exempt. Basically, I'm not loaning you money. I'm covering a debt you owe to your company to correct an accounting error." I looked at Sarah, my eyes hard. "But for that to work, you have to admit the error in writing. You have to verify that the withdrawal from your company was, let's call it, inadvertent. If you sign a statement saying you took the money by mistake, and this is a correction, the IRS treats it as a non-event. No tax, no interest." It was the oldest trick in the risk analyst handbook. Appeal to a criminal's greed, and they will ignore their survival instinct. Sarah didn't see a confession. She saw a way to save money. I opened DocuSign. I drafted a simple, 1-page affidavit. It looked utterly boring, like standard tax compliance paperwork. But in the center of the page, under the section labeled Reason for Disbursement, I left a blank text box. I emailed the link to her phone. "Okay," I said, "just fill in the reason field. Make sure you use the words inadvertent withdrawal so it looks like an accident, not theft. Then sign it." Sarah's phone pinged. She opened the email. She didn't hesitate. She didn't call a lawyer. She tapped the screen, her thumbs flying over the keyboard. She was so focused on avoiding that tax bill that she didn't realize what she was actually doing. She typed, "Repayment of inadvertent withdrawal from company funds to avoid audit discrepancy." Then she pressed sign. A moment later, my laptop chimed. "Document completed." I opened the PDF. There it was, her digital signature, timestamped, IP tracked, and legally binding under penalty of perjury. She had just confessed to felony embezzlement. She had admitted she took the money, admitted it was company funds, and admitted she was trying to cover it up. "It's done," Sarah said, looking up at me, a relieved smile. "Now transfer the money." "I need an hour for the funds to clear the holding account," I lied smoothly. "Go home, get some sleep. I'll wire it first thing in the morning." They left 5 minutes later. My mother hugged me on the way out, whispering that I was a good girl. They walked out into the rain, utterly convinced they had won. I locked the door, slid the deadbolt home, and looked at the PDF on my screen.
I didn't send the money.
I saved the file to 3 different cloud servers. I had the bait. Now I needed to close the trap. I sat in the glow of my laptop screen, the adrenaline from the DocuSign trap slowly fading into a cold, hard focus. I had the confession. Now I needed to see the full extent of the damage. I logged into the credit bureaus. I usually checked my score once a year, but I had never looked at the detailed, authorized user history. I scrolled past my student loans, past my car payments, and then I stopped. There they were. 3 credit cards I had never touched. One opened when I was 19, another at 22. The last one just 6 months ago. The total balance was $45,000. My parents hadn't just stolen my college fund. They had been wearing my credit score like a stolen coat for a decade. They had added themselves as authorized users to accounts under my name, intercepted the mail, and lived a lifestyle they couldn't afford on my future. Every vacation, every nice dinner, every gift they gave Sarah, I had paid for it. They weren't just parasites. They were identity thieves. I printed the statements. I added them to the file. Then the room lit up with blue and red flashes. 2 police cruisers screeched to a halt at my curb. My phone buzzed. It was a text from my father. "We are doing this for your own good." They had called 911. They weren't waiting for the money anymore. They were going for the nuclear option and involuntary psychiatric hold. If they could get the police to drag me out of my house in handcuffs, screaming and crying, they could file for emergency conservatorship by morning. They could seize my accounts, managing my assets while I was locked away. It was the ultimate gaslight. They expected me to be the hysterical daughter. They expected me to open the door crying, shouting about betrayal, looking exactly like the unstable woman they described to the dispatcher. But I didn't panic. I initiated the contrast protocol. I ran to my closet. I threw on my sharpest navy blazer. I put on my glasses. I put on my professional headset. I opened my laptop and started a Zoom meeting with myself, maximizing a complex spreadsheet on the screen so it reflected in my glasses. I grabbed a clipboard. The pounding started on the door. "Police, open up." I didn't run. I walked. I opened the door mid-sentence, speaking into my headset. "Look, the risk mitigation coefficients are off. We need to restructure the debt before Q3. I looked at the 2 officers standing there, hands on their holsters, ready to tackle a maniac. I tapped my headset, looking annoyed but politely professional. "Officers, can I help you? I'm in the middle of a conference call with Tokyo." The officers froze. They looked at me, calm, dressed for business, holding a clipboard, discussing finance. Then they looked over their shoulders at the driveway. My mother was there, sobbing theatrically into my father's shoulder. Sarah was screaming that I had a gun and was going to hurt myself. The contrast was violent. Inside the house, a composed professional. Outside, a chaotic, screaming circus. "Ma'am," the older officer said, his hand slowly moving away from his gun. "We received a call about a suicidal individual with a weapon." "A weapon." I laughed, a short, incredulous sound. "Officer, the only weapon I have is a quarterly earnings report." I gestured calmly. "My family is struggling financially. I refuse to give them a loan tonight. I assume this is their retaliation." I stepped back, letting them see my pristine apartment. It was clean. It was quiet. My tea was still steaming on the table. The officer looked back at my parents, who were now yelling at the neighbors. He shook his head. He pulled out his notepad. "I apologize for the disturbance, ma'am. We'll clear this as a false report." "Thank you," I said, my voice steady. "Please ask them to leave my property." I watched from the window as the police spoke to my parents. I saw my father's face turn purple. I saw Sarah stomp her foot like a child. They were told to leave or face arrest for misuse of emergency services. They drove away, defeated, their grand plan shattered. I closed the blinds. My hands were steady. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I had saved 3 years ago. "Mr. Vance," I said when he answered. "It's Amelia." The contrast protocol worked. "Good," he rumbled, his voice like gravel and shark skin. "Are we ready for the next step?" "Yes." "I need you to check the date on the LLC filing." "I'm looking at it now," Vance said. "You bought the tax lien certificate on your parents' house exactly 3 years ago yesterday. The statutory redemption period expired at midnight." I let out a breath I felt like I had been holding since I was 18. "File the deed," I said. "I don't just want the money. I want the roof." 2 days later, I stepped into the formidable lobby of Vance and Associates, 45 floors up in a downtown glass tower. Freezing air, polished marble, my heels clicking like a countdown. My family had demanded this meeting. After the police debacle, they'd hired a lawyer, Really, a strip mall attorney who filed an emergency conservatorship petition claiming my erratic behavior and that I was a danger to myself, all to get a judge to hand them control of my finances immediately. But Mr. Vance had intervened, blocked the emergency hearing, and forced them into binding private arbitration first, to settle matters discreetly. They thought discreet meant I'd surrender, sign papers, hand over a check, maybe even apologize. They didn't realize they were walking into a killbox. I opened the heavy oak door to a windowless, soundproof conference room that smelled of lemon polish and old money. A long, gleaming mahogany table sat in the center. They were already there. My father, lounging at the head, acting like he owned the building. My mother beside him, her purse clutched tight, wearing her most concerned mother mask. Sarah looked glossy in a silk blouse, but her leg bounced a frantic rhythm under the table. She knew that audit on Monday put her 48 hours from handcuffs if I didn't sign. Mr. Vance sat at the far end, a silent shark in a three-piece suit, and beside him, a court reporter hovered over a steno machine, her fingers poised. Their exhausted lawyer stood. Amelia, he began. The conservatorship agreement is ready. Your father as financial guardian and your sister as... I walked past him. I pulled out the chair directly opposite my father and sat. No hello. No explanation. I simply placed one thin file folder on the table. Where's the check? My father demanded, his voice thick with entitlement. We're not here for a check, I said, my voice calm, steady. We're here to correct the record. Sarah immediately snapped that I was unstable, that I had called the police on myself. My mother dabbed a dry eye with a tissue, insisting they only wanted to protect me. Mr. Vance cleared his throat. Everything said in this room is under oath and on the record. Proceed. They didn't flinch. The court reporter asked for names. Sarah gave hers, smooth and practiced, then launched into her story. How I'd struggled for a long time, had delusional episodes, promised her money for business expansion, then became erratic. They just needed to stabilize my assets before I harmed myself. My father nodded solemnly. She imagines things. Click, click, click. The stenographer etched every single lie into the permanent record. Perjury. Exactly as I'd planned. When Sarah finished swearing that the money was for business expansion and that I had offered it, Mr. Vance pressed a button. The projector lit up, casting a stark white light on the wall. Exhibit A. A blown-up DocuSign affidavit, highlighted in yellow. The reason for disbursement box was crystal clear. Repayment of inadvertent withdrawal from company funds to avoid audit discrepancy. The room went utterly silent. Miss Miller, Vance said, his voice mild, yet cutting. Why did you just testify that these funds were for business expansion when you signed a sworn affidavit stating they were to repay embezzled funds? Sarah stopped breathing. Color drained from her face. She stammered, then tried. She told me to write that. It was a tax thing. So you're admitting tax fraud? Vance's voice sharpened. Or admitting perjury? She snapped shut. Vance clicked again. Exhibit B. A timeline. 10 years of credit card statements. Amex Gold, Chase Sapphire, Discover. All opened in my name. Signatures eerily resembling my mother's handwriting. Charges for vacations I never took. Clothes I never wore. A car I never drove. $45,000 in unauthorized debt. Vance stated. Federal identity theft, wire fraud, mail fraud. The statute of limitations hasn't expired on the last 5 years. My mother squeaked, grabbing my father's arm. He turned purple. We raised her. We're entitled to. You are entitled to nothing. Vance cut him off, his voice like a whip. You stole her identity. That carries a mandatory minimum sentence in federal prison. My father visibly shrank in his chair. Vance clicked once more. Exhibit C. A deed. A tax lien deed. My father squinted at the screen. That's my house. Look at the owner, I said, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. EC Holdings LLC. I bought the tax debt on your house 3 years ago, I explained, looking directly at my father. Through a shell company, I paid the back taxes, and I waited. My mother whispered, a flicker of hope in her eyes. You saved the house? No, I said. I bought the debt. The 3-year redemption period. You didn't pay it back. It expired yesterday at midnight. I leaned forward, my eyes locking onto his. I didn't pay your mortgage, Dad. I foreclosed. I own the roof over your heads. You're trespassing. Then came the screaming. My father lunged across the table, only to be held back by Vance's security. Sarah reached for the laptop like breaking the screen could break the truth. My mother wailed about family, while the court reporter, unflinching, captured every threat and every desperate, pathetic slip. "Sit down," Mr. Vance roared, his voice shaking the room. And they did. Small, terrified. He slid a thick, final document across the table. "This," I said, "is a confession of judgment and a voluntary restraining order." I pointed to the signature lines. "You admit the $45,000 in identity theft debt. You vacate the house, my house, within 7 days. Permanent no contact. Come within 500 feet of me or my workplace, you go to jail. And if we don't sign," Sarah whispered, her voice barely a breath. "Then I email Exhibit A to the district attorney," I said, my finger hovering over the enter key on my phone, "and Exhibit B to the FBI. You'll be arrested before you reach the elevator." My father searched my face for the daughter he used to bully. She wasn't there. His hand shook as he signed. My mother signed, silently weeping, her carefully constructed, concerned mother, mask utterly shattered. Sarah signed last, staring at the table as her future dissolved into ink. I took the folder, stood, and walked out. I breathed the city air like it was the first real oxygen I'd had in years. I blocked their numbers before I even reached my car. The aftermath was swift. Sarah was fired the very next day after I anonymously forwarded her audit discrepancies to her board. She became, quite simply, unhireable. My parents moved into a small rental 2 towns over, their grand life of entitlement crumbling around them. I sold the house 3 months later. The profit paid off the debt they'd stolen from me and funded my move to a new city where nobody knows my last name. I'm alone now, yes, but I am not lonely. I wake up every day in a house I own, with credit that is genuinely mine, and a life no one, ever again, can liquidate. So, that's my story. It's a harsh one, I know, but it made me wonder, have you ever had to become the villain in someone else's story just to survive in your own? I really want to know your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. And hey, if you're listening from somewhere you feel trapped or stuck, tell me what time it is where you are. I want to see just how far this story travels.